Well, welcome everyone to the Society of Thoracic Surgeons Intermacs and Pedimacs User Group webinar. This is Wednesday, April 28th, and I appreciate everyone logging in today and taking some time out of your day for Intermacs and Pedimacs questions. I'm going to go ahead and go through the slides, and I want to let everyone know we have a special guest today. We have Sylvia Lawden, who is going to, she has much experience with submitting abstracts for the AQO meeting, the data managers big meeting in the fall. And she's going to go through steps to submit an abstract for Intermacs and Pedimacs later on in the webinar. So we have the Intermacs data warehouse team joining us today. We have Patricia Potter, Jeannie and Love, Devin Cole, and John Pennington. Then we have Chase Linderman, who helps with assist with the programming. So today for the agenda, we have an STS update about any programming that's going on or updates, AQO abstract submission, and we'd love to have your feedback as always. We're still allowing for the COVID-19 rule, so you still have that extra 30 days for your visits, patients' visits. We're going to discuss this internally to see a deadline that we'll put on this, but I know many sites are still doing telehealth visits, depending on where you are in the country, so we're still allowing this exception. For contact information, you can email me with your database questions. You can also email Patricia Potter. And then for any other database operational questions, you have the Intermacs FAQ mailbox. We have our resources listed, and these slides will be posted, so you'll be able to have the links to all this information. Our upcoming webinar for Intermacs will be May 26th at 1 p.m. and our next Intermacs reporting webinar is July 15th at 2 p.m. Central Time. And we will definitely send out an email reminding everyone of both those webinars. So as usual, we'll follow our same webinar function. If you can please use the Q&A function to submit your questions. We'll answer as many questions as possible, and we encourage your feedback and want to hear from you. Prior to us accepting your questions, we're going to go ahead and have Sylvia review the AQO abstract submission. And AQO this year, I believe it's October 12th through the 15th. I am not sure of the Intermacs day. Frequently it is the first, or last year it was the first day, but I'm not sure what day is allocated to Intermacs and Pedimacs this year. Carol, do you happen to know?
I think we're going to stick with the same schedule, Catherine. It's the 12th through the 15th. Yep, and Tuesday, October 12th is dedicated to Intermacs. Pedimacs, general thoracic is the 13th, adult cardiac is the 14th, and congenital will be on the 15th.
Okay, great. Thank you for that update.
You're welcome.
So we will now, Sylvia, thank you so much for joining us today and providing us these steps to writing a successful abstract for AQO.
Okay,
I will stop sharing so you can share your screen.
Can you see it?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay, and if anybody has any questions or concerns, don't hesitate to send us a question. So good afternoon. I'm gonna go through the process of how to write a successful abstract for poster presentations. And first of all, you want to know why you're writing your abstract. Your abstract can be based on any kind of change in practice that has occurred at your institution. You want to showcase new knowledge that your center has discovered, or you want to just tell your story about what kind of quality initiatives you used and how you changed and improved patient care. So when you start to write an abstract basically has 5 structures or sections that you need to have in your abstract to kind of formulate a summary of what's going on as far as your project goes. You start off with a title, and it's got to be clear. It's got to identify your topic and your disease. You want to make sure that your abstractor is caught by the title and they're interested in what you have to present. When you get to your background or your information, this is where you basically have what's the purpose of your study, or if you've developed a hypothesis. And this helps you kind of identify what started the project and what you hope to learn or discover. And then when you move on to the method or your study population, this is where you want to clearly define your method of your study. What was involved? How did you do it? What statistical test tools or equipment did you use? Where and when did you conduct it? It kind of gives the reader a chance to say, is this something I can reproduce at my center? Then you get to your results. And again, your summary of results, this is just basically summarizing what you learned. What did you discover in your project? There is no interpretation in your results. It's kind of flat. You basically tell the facts. And for STS, you are allowed to submit either a one table, one graph, or one illustration to represent your results. Then you find your final section in this, in your abstract, is your conclusion. And this is your statement where you tell us you can interpret your results. You want to relate it back to your background and your hypothesis. Did your conclusion, you want to include your scientific relevance? And is there any implications for future research? And again, your conclusion kind of summarizes, take it back to your background and tie it together. So I'm kind of going to go through the different sections. And I had gone to a nursing evidence-based conference. And that year there was a lot of, there's 4 posters on early extubation or extubation by pediatric patients. And I just wanted to go over the different titles. One of them was just basically a reduced unplanned extubation, a quality improvement project. And I think this was actually an NICU unit, but it's not descriptive enough. The title doesn't give you enough information to determine what this project is about. However, the next one is Getting to Zero, Eliminating Unplanned Extubations in Pediatric Intensive Care. So you kind of get the plan that basically it's a pediatric unit. They have children that are being extubated and they're not planned. And so now they really want to improve on that number. So I'm going to run you through one of my poster presentations that I did on LVADs to kind of show you how we went and developed everything for your title, your introduction, your method, your results, and your conclusion. I'm going to start off with titles. And this poster was originally, we started a discussion as far as were patients who had a high BMI, were they more prone to having complications post-operatively? And this was brought up in a selection meeting, and some of the physicians assumed that if you had a BMI, and I can't even remember, this has been like 4 years, if the BMI was like greater than 35, they thought, well, they're going to have more complications with driveline infections or device malfunctions or neurological problems. So we actually said, we don't have the data, and we're going to use our data to take a look and see what's going on. So again, with the title, it's a 5-year review. And so we looked at 5 years of LVAD patients, and we wanted to see if they had negative or positive outcomes related to their BMIs. So you start off with your background, and again, with your background, it's a brief statement and it identifies your problem. This is where you clearly want to identify your hypothesis. So for our BMI study, it was basically the assumption of the medical community is that patients with a higher BMI are at increased risk for complications post-device implantation. The purpose of this study was to analyze the outcomes by grouping patients using BMI at a single center transplant institution. So if you're having a hard time at trying to figure out what your purpose is, or you're having difficulty trying to come up with your hypothesis, there are tools that you can use. This one I got from the University of Missouri. It's basically a clinical question that you design using PICU. And you can find this, any resource for evidence-based practice nursing is going to have this. So you can easily Google this on your line. But basically what the PICU clinical question asks for is, what is your patient population? Who's your patient? Who's your population? What are your interventions? what are you comparing? What is your outcomes or expected outcomes, and what's your time frame? And time frame is optional depending on what your question is. And also too, when you find the how to write a PQ question online, they'll also give you different templates based on what type of, there's about 12 of them. I only listed these 3, but there's different templates that you can use based on what kind of research you're doing. And you can just kind of plug it in. So in this case, I'm going to say that my patient population is adult LVAD patients. I'm going to say that my intervention is daily dressing changes. I'm going to say that I'm comparing that to twice a week dressing changes. I'm going to say my outcome is driveline infections, and my time frame is the first 90 days post implant. And again, this is just an example, but then when you plug it into your sentence, it becomes, and I'm using the top one, and this is for interventions or therapies. In adult LVAD patients, what is the effect of daily dressing changes on driveline infections and compare with twice a week dressing changes within the first 90 days post implant? So if you don't have an idea of how to develop your purpose or your hypothesis, this is a great tool to use. And again, you can find the resources very easy online. And again, I got this from the University of Missouri, but there's a lot of good examples out there. So once you have your background, then you want to go to your method or your study population. And again, this is where you provide details. And basically, you want the researcher to be able to look at your abstract or your poster or your presentation, and they need to be able to take this information and possibly reproduce this study at their center. So you're giving them information on your population and is this feasible for my center? So in this case, it's a retrospective review of data, and it was done utilizing Intermacs registry and the implanting institution's EMR after obtaining IRB approval from October 2010 to September 2016. It was data abstracted was limited to implant for primary LVAD patients greater than 18 years of age who completed 12-month follow-up. A total of 182 primary implants were included in the study. Patients were grouped according to their preoperative BMI into 6 categories. They were either underweight, normal weight, overweight, obese class 1, obese class 2, or severe obesity class 3. So when you take this information for your method and you break it down, what was in that paragraph? It was a retrospective review. Your source or your tool was the Intermacs registry and the EMR, also to the adult cardiac STS. It wasn't put in there. Also too, your time frame was October 2010 to September 2016. We were using adult patients, so they were over the age of 18, and we wanted them to complete a 12-month follow-up. There was a total of 182 primary implants, and we were using their preoperative BMI as their classification. So you want to give all that information in your method so that you can define exactly what you did, how you did it, and who you focused on. So then the next section is your results. And in your results section, basically this is where you present your information, summarize your data. You want to answer at least one really important question, but you don't want to interpret, you just want to present the facts. So in this case, with my results, I had normal weight patients experience the highest percentage of mortality at 27% and neurological events at 22%. My overweight patients had the highest percentage of driveline infections. My obese class 2 patients, they had the highest percentage of device malfunctions at 40%. And in our study, none of these findings achieved statistical significance. So that's all matter of fact, plain and simple. There's no interpretation. Now, with STS, you are allowed to use a table, a graph, or an illustration. With your table, they do ask that you do not exceed 10 columns or 10 rows. And again, this is when you submit your abstract, you can present one of the other. For your graph, with your graph, you basically, and I grabbed this from my cabbage poster, with your graph, you want to clearly identify a title. You want to identify your X and your Y axis. You want to give a time frame. You want to represent your patient population. Basically, the graph should be able to stand alone, and that the reader can actually look at your graph and kind of interpret what kind of information you're trying to get from your results. And then, of course, then there's illustrations. But again, with your illustration, you want to let the reader know exactly what they're focusing their attention on. Make sure you give enough information so that they'll be able to identify exactly what they're looking in your illustration. Then you move on to your conclusion, and your conclusion, this is where you can interpret your results. Basically, what you're going to do is you're going to take your results and you're going to bring them back to what your objective was or what your hypothesis was. It should tie back to your background statement. So for this one, what we did is our conclusion was there was a common myth in the medical community about obesity is not a valid, the common myth in the medical community about obesity is not validated from our experience. However, interesting findings from our study reveal that there is a trend for increased device malfunction in obese individuals. And the drawback to the study included the fact that it was a retrospective review. It was a single center. We had low volumes in underweight and severely obese group, and that a multi-institutional study is needed to address important issues with the LVAD community. So what the nice thing about your abstract is once your abstract is complete, it writes your poster. So for the most part, with your introduction, it moves right into the purpose of my project was to analyze the research of the preoperative BMI and postoperative outcomes during 12-month follow-up at a large transplant center. So there you go. It's all written out. So from your abstract, you can move into your introduction, again, into your method. Again, there was the design, my patient population, who was included, who was excluded, your data sources, your data collection. In this case, we use the World Health Organization for our BMI classifications. It's all written out there, and what statistical analysis we used. Then as you move into your results, my results are numbered. I did have graphs. So for every number, there is a graph that's associated with it. So anything that was presented, I could present it. It's presented on the poster. But for the most part, you want to, I was able to compare. We used a CHI test for our post-operative outcomes. And again, we determined that there was no level of significance. My conclusion was pretty much written out for me. Again, we had no significant relationship. We had our limitations, and it was a retrospective single center. We also had our recommendations for future studies. So to follow up, make sure you follow the guidelines. Definitely go to the guidelines that are addressed by STS and make sure when you read over them that you follow them. Some other things I do want to point out is make sure you spell it out. I mean, I know you know what a BMI is, you know what a bridge transplant is, you know what an LVAD is, but when you first present it in your abstract or your paper or your poster, spell it out. Also make sure that you provide your authors, all of your authors, names, titles, names of your authors and institutions that they belong to. Again, limit it to 250 words. With your 250 words, that does not include your title, the name of your authors, or your headings. So, but definitely, this is a brief summary of what your project is. So just be cautious of that 250. If it's greater than one page, you've gone over it. Then also to make sure you fill out the disclosure forms, especially when you submit. I did have a couple of sub-Is that did participate with LVAD device companies. So it's real important that you include that in there. Also, to summarize, when you're doing an abstract, share it with somebody who will give you good feedback. If I send it to my surgeons, if I send my poster or my abstract to them, they always say, great job, looks good. I don't want that. There's a cardiologist down the hall. I show it to him. He'll be the first thing to say, this doesn't belong in your methods section. I don't like your background statement. You need to add more to your conclusion. You want them to give you that feedback, and you want them to tell you what you need to correct or what you need to edit before you submit it. Make sure you send it to somebody who gives you real feedback and not, hey, it looks great. because I know in some projects, you know what you've done. And chances are, if you're submitting an abstract, you probably had some type of performance improvement project, or y'all been doing some type of study or some research at your center, and you've been doing it for over a year. You know it like the back of your hand, but now you need to communicate it to us, but you need to communicate it in the format, but then also to, you have to summarize it in as few words as you can, but still give us enough details to know what's going on at your site. And also to, if you submit your abstract to STS and they ask for resubmission, this isn't an insult. Basically, they need more information. I can honestly tell you all my abstracts have come back. It's okay, take that feedback. They just need more clarification. A lot of times they just need more information. So take the opportunity to use that feedback that was given to you and see if you can improve on your abstract. And also, please resubmit. And I can honestly tell you, if I can do it, you can do it. This is my poster from 2018. This one was done on our ventilation times when we reduced it in our bypass patients. It was a project that we had done to improve our care pathways. So if I can do it, you guys can do it. Don't hesitate to submit an abstract on something that's going on in your institution that you think that that you'd like to highlight and you'd like to promote, because chances are there are other institutions out there who have the same problem and they're looking for solutions, and it would be great for you to share. Again, if you have any questions or concerns, don't hesitate to give me a call. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sylvia. Thank you very much. So at this point of the webinar, we will go ahead and get started with our question and answer session. And again, the slide for writing a successful abstract, this whole webinar, the slides, and there's also a video that should be posted at the end of the week. So on this section, we will go ahead and start our open discussion. We're going to begin it by Patricia Potter, the informatics nurse at the Intermacs Data Warehouse. I believe is going to start by she followed up on the bivalirudin question, and she has a couple of items to discuss with you also.
Okay, thanks, Catherine. So I did want to just touch base with you guys and let you know that I did talk to Dr. Kirkland, and we did get an answer on how bivalirudin should be captured appropriately in Intermacs. And we are going to not have you classify it under a thrombolytic or any of the other medications that are currently on there. We're going to add it as its own field, and we are currently working on that now. So I know there was a lot of discussion on our last call about should it be considered a thrombolytic, and the answer is no, and we are going to add it as a separate question. So that is coming. And then I did also want to mention that we had talked about adding FAQs, and we have done that. We have added FAQs to the user's guide to be consistent with STS National Database. So that is now up on the Intermacs website on the Intermacs Appendices tab under Appendix P. Those are there. It's just the initial FAQs, the ones that we felt were coming in the most, but we are going to update them quarterly. So as you guys send me questions, Catherine questions, or the FAQ or the Intermacs inbox, we will be archiving them and adding them to here. So any questions you guys have, please reach out and we will add those there.
Great. Thank you, Patricia. I really appreciate that for the update. Also, I wanted to mention we are in the process. We have two projects where Intermacs, the data warehouse, is working on. One is a dashboard that will be available to demonstrate at AQO, and it allows sites to drill down to their data via when you log into the database. So that's some really exciting news. We also, as we've been discussing and telling the sites we're in the process of programming the Intermacs adverse events, and the programming team is working on that. And so those should also be ready at the end of summer. And are there any more updates from the Intermacs data warehouse? UAB, do y'all have anything to add?
Hey, Catherine.
We're testing. Yeah, sorry, Rama, go ahead.
No. Yeah. So there is one release that is coming up, which will have some a few changes and then bug fixes for Intermacs. So we're working on that. But yeah, like you said, Catherine, the AE changes and the dashboard we're currently working on.
Okay, great. Thanks, Rama. Appreciate it. All your hard work and your team's hard work on this.
Yeah, no problem.
So I think now, if there's nothing more to add, we'll go ahead and again, please use the Q&A function to submit your questions, and we'll start getting to those.
Catherine, I can take these first two if you want.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so Wendy's asking, our team has a question regarding primary VAD implant. If the patient has had an Impella prior to the implant hospitalization or during the implant hospitalization, but prior to the VAD implant, this is not considered a primary implant, correct? Just to clarify my last question, sorry, the VAD HeartMate implanted would still be the primary implant. And that's correct, Wendy. The primary implant would be your LVAD, your HeartMate.
Okay. Thank you, Patricia. The next question, is there any strategic planning and process to better audit the registry? Since 2007, we've had one audit on a handful of patients. Our center has implanted 1,000+ durable VADs. There are rarely any audits, and when performed, they're minimal. It's disheartening when you see how much is published out of registry with no checks and balances, recognizing it's all we have with regards to the registry. It'd be nice to feel confident in the findings published. I can't say that many do. Unfortunately, anyone that enters in data knows there is a plethora of pertinent data points missing, specifically rehospitalizations and adverse events. How is this acceptable? Thank you for addressing.
I'd be
Laura,
happy.
go ahead.
Go ahead, Catherine.
First off, Laura, thank you for bringing this up. Actually, there have been audits going on with the database since 2007. With the transition to STS, we do have audits that started we have a new company that's performing the audits this year, and it's random. It's 10% of the Intermacs sites. So, and actually, your center, if you could actually send me an email, I'd love to look at your site code and see how many integrity checks you've been sent and so forth. But the data warehouse actually does monthly data integrity checks that you may receive. There was a little, I think we did not perform them. There was a lapse in these when the prior nurse monitor had retired, but those are back and have been going strong since January. But I think the only 2 months that they didn't go were November and December of 2020. But those are performed on a monthly basis. And there's many checks and balances within the registry. And with our version upgrades, we're always trying to make the database up to date into current practices. And also, as far as adverse events, we are the major adverse events are having a major upgrade. And that, as I mentioned earlier, those forms and definitions will be available at the end of summer of this year.
Catherine, this is Carol. If I could add into what you've talked about. So the STS does audit all of their databases. We skipped over 2020 because of COVID and the impact it had on sites, but we do audit 10% of all of our databases. The 2021 audit will be performed on 2019-2020 data, since we skipped over the 2020 audit, which would have been on 2019 data. The Intermacs has an astounding matching rate of, I think it's over 99% Is that correct, Catherine? It's either 98 or 99% accuracy within the database?
I believe it was 98%.
98%. So just because your site has only been audited once since 2017, which that's very interesting. We do randomize audit sites, and it is 10% of all sites that participate.
Hi,
With-
Carol and Catherine, this is Leanne. I just wanted to point out, I just put a link in the chat box to the audit information that is posted on the STS website for Intermacs. So all of the 2021 audit, Intermacs audit information can be found in that via that link. So you can see the variables being audited this year and all the information of how it's going to work.
Great, thanks. Thanks. And third-party auditing is very important to the integrity of the database. Intermacs is the database that has the highest match rate within the STS, so we're very proud of that. And in addition, as Catherine said, they do the monthly integrity checks.
Yes, thank you very much. Thanks, Carol, and thank you, Leanne, for posting that.
No
I
worries.
appreciate it. The next question is, are the Intermacs FAQs posted? Yes, they are. As Patricia mentioned, they're on the Intermacs website, and I'll get a link also on the STS website to them. They are under the Intermacs appendices, Appendix P. The next question is, if a patient receives an RVAD after the initial implant of durable LVAD, would there be any consideration to modifying the pre-implant form so that redundant questions aren't being asked a second time, i.e. PMH, clinical events, pre-hospitalization, and comorbidities? Hey, Nicole, that's a really good question. And this is something that I have been working on for the data managers to see, like, if it's within 7 days to 10 days after that primary LVAD implant, if we could just forego the pre-implant for that RVAD. The task force feels really strongly that the patient's physicality has changed, and so that's really good data. We've even thought about maybe making it a smaller form, that pre-implant form for when an RVAD's being implanted, but those are such good variables for the patient. So it's an ongoing discussion, but I appreciate you bringing it up. So go ahead. That looks like all the questions that we have today so far, but I'll give everyone another minute or two to submit a question. Well, it looks like that's all the questions that we have for today. I appreciate everyone joining today and submitting your questions. Sylvia, thank you very much for your presentation on how to submit abstracts. I encourage everyone, if you are doing any QI projects at your site, no matter how big or small, you can just follow the guidelines and submit an abstract to AQO. And I believe we will, those guidelines, are they, Carol or Leanne, do you know if they're on the website?
I don't think they've been posted yet. They will be coming soon. I think Emily said, yeah, they'll be coming soon, but I think there'll be some information, I think on the next webinar, possibly, but there'll be some information coming out from Emily's side once that information is posted and available.
Okay, great.
Also, it looks like Carol and Patricia, they posted a link to the Intermacs FAQs that you had mentioned earlier. So that's in the chat box also under Appendix P.
In our next question, we did have a question come in from Felicia. Under what circumstances can we report epistasis as a major bleeding event? Felicia, I have your email, so I'm going to send you the FAQs we have on that. And so that looks like that is all the questions for today. I again appreciate everyone joining and submitting your questions. As a reminder, the next user group webinar will be May 26th at 1 p.m. And I believe on that webinar, we're going to focus on the implant form and the new changes that have been implemented on that form. So thank you. Thanks everyone for joining today.
Thanks, Catherine. Excellent webinar. Great presentation, Sylvia. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks, Sylvia.
Hope you guys all have a great week.
Thanks, you too. Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Great job, Catherine.
Thanks.
Edward, Catherine, talk to you later. Bye.